It's good. All right. Hello, everyone. Buenos días. Bienvenida to mi canal. Soy Roxana Bangura. Welcome to my channel. It's been 6 months. Thank you so much. I'm still here in Mexico. I'm still living this fabulous Mexico life. And my name is Roxana Bangura here on YouTube. And I have the Bangura Chronicles on Facebook and the Bangura Institute on Facebook. I have the pleasure of connecting with one of my sisters in one of my groups here. She's an author. Her name is Miss Camille Flores, and she has many years in Mexico. A lot of great advice, a lot of wisdom. She's an author on several books. On how to write. Okay, she's an author on books on to teach you writing, which I'm very intrigued by. I have to get her books on that. She's an author of books on Mexico, life in Mexico, how to succeed in Mexico, as well as a children's author. So you're gonna enjoy this chat that we're gonna have. And Camille, I'm gonna hand it over to you to introduce yourself.
Well, thank you, Roxana. I was very excited about being here. My name is Camille Flores. I write under the pen name C.E. Flores, and most of my books have to do with living in Mexico, as Roxana mentioned, but they're not really mainstream books. My target audience is women who have moved to Mexico, not necessarily because they wanted to. They may have come with a deported spouse or actually financial reasons as well. So there are some challenges living in Mexico as a woman, and the books that I write are the books that I wish had been available when I moved to Mexico. It was a very difficult transition, and so my idea is to help other women do better than I did.
Okay.
So
let's explore some things, because you said so many things in that statement. I want to get into when you're saying that this is not necessarily the woman who moved by choice. It could be because of economics or because for family, to keep the family together. Can you talk a little bit about the women that you're speaking with? Like, who is your typical reader?
Well, a lot of women have come with their deported spouses or have voluntarily deported, which is what is true in my case. I came with my husband and son in 2007, and that was a choice that we made deliberately. Instead of waiting for things to get more difficult or an issue with immigration, we decided to go ahead and move to Mexico. We moved to a rural area, so that in itself has a lot of different challenges compared to an expat area. It's very difficult to adapt to the culture. And I had my husband as sort of a mediator, but there are things that as a woman I didn't know how to do, and it made it difficult for my husband's sisters and my husband's mother to interact with me. So I didn't know how to do some things. I didn't know how to wash by hand. I didn't know how that when the bell rang, you have to run out and put the trash on the corner and things like that.
I remember that in Mexico City. So you said cultural differences and adjusting, and your husband was a mediator. How did that dynamic work out? Were you a Spanish speaker at that point?
Yes, I had studied Spanish at the university, so I did speak Spanish. However, actually speaking Spanish and speaking vernacular Spanish is a different thing. There were a lot of mistranslations or misunderstandings because I didn't know exactly how to phrase things. So textbook Spanish and Mexican Spanish are completely different.
They really are. They really are. I thought I spoke Spanish when I moved here. Not.
Yeah.
So, how did you? Is he from a family of a lot of women, or mixed with a lot of men and women? And how does that dynamic play out?
Well, he's one of 11 children, so there were half are boys, half are girls. And then, of course, there are their wives and my mother-in-law. And I don't know, it was difficult. Some of the sisters I get along with, and some not really. So there's a lot of also misconceptions about Americans as well. So still, after 15 years, I still have that problem. People assume these things about me that aren't true because I'm from the United States. And so
What
it's
are the
difficult.
misconceptions?
That I have a lot of money is one. That I have government support, that's another. That I receive cash handouts from the government, from the US government. Not true. That I have a sense of superiority, which sometimes it comes across that way because I am an introvert, and so it's difficult for me to express things. And so that's another thing, cultural difference. The way that I do things are different than the way they do things. So some things I've adapted, and some things I continue to do as I do them. And that sort of makes it a distinguishing feature between me and my sisters-in-laws.
Now, I mean, you guys have been together a long time. I mean, just here in Mexico, you have a lot of time on the ground. What have you adjusted to? What have you learned? This sounds like it's been a hard challenge, and I know I'm a single mom, single woman, so I don't have the whole suegra cuñada dynamic, the political family dynamic. I'm just an outsider observing things, and I'm long in the tooth, so a lot of things I know that I see from my sisters living here. It would be very hard for me to adjust, particularly with a child. What have you adjusted to, and what have you learned? Because you have these books as a resource, particularly for women who come here. I think what we have to realize is that relationships are very different when we're in different countries, and how the culture impacts the dynamic of the family, the marriage. Can you share like the hard challenge, the lessons that you've learned these 14 years in Mexico as a wife of a Mexican national?
I will mention that because we voluntarily deported, we sort of had like a honeymoon period here in Mexico where things were good and we were optimistic. Over the long haul, it's been very difficult for my husband. This is not where he wanted to live. He wanted to remain in the United States, and it's just not going to be a possibility. We've looked at legal channels and things like that. It's not going to happen. So that has sort of influenced his attitude about some things. And of course, that makes it more difficult. I'm trying to be optimistic, or sometimes he gets frustrated with me because there are things that I still don't understand. And he just assumes that I should have picked this up, osmosis type thing. And I don't. So it really has been difficult on that effect. And I know that talking to other women that have come here, some women have decided to return to the United States instead of trying to stick it out, creating a life here. And that's kind of what I was going for with my books. There are some things that we as women have expectations for that sort of ruin everything for us. So like if you confront those expectations and realize that things are not the same here, sometimes you make a better transition, but sometimes it's really better to go back.
It's better to go back. You think
Yeah.
so? There was a very interesting point by one of the women in the group, and she said our men were very bold and courageous to migrate and move and immigrate to the United States and start this whole new life. But if there's a case where you have to repatriate back to Mexico, there are men that come right back to their hometown. They come right back to where they're from, and in many instances, these towns are just not economic strongholds. In many instances, from what I've observed in the group, these areas are just more rural. There's less economic opportunity. It's a little bit more hard scrabble. The men may be low skilled. What I've observed is a lot of the men are in construction, and that's construction here in Mexico is almost like a dime a dozen. A lot of people know how to build things, and electrical, plumbing, all these sort of things. Why do you think there's that dynamic? Because he didn't want to come back to Mexico. Like, I'm very happy here. I don't want to return to the United States. Why do you think the men, some of them, return back to their hometowns as opposed to trying to live in another area of Mexico where it's more, I guess, economic, that just has better economics, a larger city, more opportunities, maybe more cosmopolitan, progressive? why do you think they just come right back to their hometown? Some men, this is just,
I think it's most men that are deported go back to their hometowns. There's a level of support. They have, usually mom is there. And so mom is there to give them the attention that they need, which again adds a different dynamic to a marriage when mom has not been in the United States as part of the family dynamic. So they're familiar with the area. They know people. Some friends are in the area, I'm sure. They also feel like they can maybe find a job in that area because they have contacts. A lot of living in Mexico is who you know, not what you know. Mm-hmm. And so it's very difficult to just start in a city where you don't know anyone. It's not like in the United States where there is a community of Hispanics in most towns. So if you can find the little Hispanic marketplace in the town, then you can make the connections you need to find a job or find a place to live and things like that. It doesn't happen here in bigger cities. It's everyone tries to do whatever they can for themselves and their family and their contacts rather than helping this person they don't know. So it is more difficult.
It is more difficult, and that makes sense to me. Let's talk about, let's backtrack a little bit about where you're from in the States and, your background, your education, your family, and then, how did you come to connect with your Mexican, husband, and how did that come about?
Well, I'm from central Pennsylvania, and I actually met my husband when I was studying for a teaching degree in Nebraska. So we met at a restaurant in Nebraska. I wanted to improve my fluency in Spanish, so I decided to work at a Mexican restaurant, and I managed to get myself a husband in the process. So after I graduated, we lived in Virginia for a time, and the laws there made it so it was more difficult for him to get any sort of documentation. So that's when we made the decision to self-deport and move to Mexico.
Okay, all right, and that was in 2007. Did you, how was that? So, I just want to kind of know the process. Like, did you have an understanding in your mind that, we're moving? Will I be able to again return to my country and have a life with this man, with my child? And how did your child receive that and the transition for your son?
Well, he was 4, so it wasn't too bad. He didn't have problems. We sent him to Mexican public school, so he was integrated, and in fact, he's graduating in a few weeks from prepa. So we're very excited with that. It's not an easy process to get through the Mexican education system. So, and the other part was, when we decided that this was what we were going to do, the decision was that come what may, I was going to find a way to make it work. And that was way more difficult than I expected. I did have expectations. I expected to being able to find a job that would support us and things like that. And it was not easy initially. In fact, we made some huge blunders. We bought property in an area that was not regularized. It was lacking its permits. So we had no electricity for 10 years. And that was extremely difficult for me. I mean, my grandmother had a washing machine. This was a completely foreign concept to me, washing by hand and managing by candlelight and things like that.
10 years?
10 years, yes.
Wow.
Yes.
And you didn't run back to the States?
No, I didn't.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
So it was difficult. It was a difficult transition. But I had made the commitment. I like where I live. My husband built our house. It's a gorgeous house. I love it. And I know that in the United States, we wouldn't be able to have the quality of life here now that we have electricity.
Yes. Can you talk about where you are and your quality of life and how, you're living better here?
Mm-hmm. Where I live is on the border of Michoacan and Guanajuato. So it's a very rural area.
That's like central Mexico.
Central Mexico, right. The area that I live in, still does not have any utilities, but the technology has changed so that we have been able to purchase solar panels and adaptable things, like we have a satellite internet and things like that, that was not available just a few years ago. So like all of a sudden things just came together and our life is so much more comfortable. I have a washing machine, let me tell you.
That's a big deal.
Yes, it is. Again, that's part of why I write these books, because sometimes women have no idea what they're getting into when they move to rural Mexico. It's not common. Well, it is common for people not to have enough electricity to run a washer, for example, or the internet could be sketchy or things like that. And those are things that women aren't really prepared for. They just assume that it's going to be as easy as the United States. Now, I hope anyone that comes to Mexico doesn't have the problems of 10 years without electricity like I did. I hope that they're able to start at a higher level.
What is the capital city in what is the capital?
Guanajuato.
It's the capital of Guanajuato
Capital.
State. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I'm wondering why they're, I guess the area is not developed. Is it agricultural there? There's farming?
Yes.
What's
Mm-hmm.
okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
What do they produce mainly in that area?
Corn.
Of course. Maize. Okay.
Yes.
Maize.
Right.
Okay.
It's fairly agricultural here. Yes.
All right, and you're happy there. What do you get to travel often to other areas of Mexico? Is there a possibility of ever relocating to a place that's a little bit more developed?
Well, I have considered it, but it is so hard to establish yourself. And like I mentioned, it's getting to that point where who you know rather than what you know. If you don't have the connections, it is hard to reestablish yourself. The property that we have is ours. Well, it isn't like we're renting or anything. So it's an investment to the future. And I don't think that we would ever get the amount of money that we spent getting it habitable back if we sold it. So that's kind of a deterrent. Before the pandemic, we would go to different places on like day trips or overnight trips. Michoacan is just a beautiful state. It's where the monarch butterfly sanctuaries are and things.
Mm-hmm.
So Guanajuato is also beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
There are lots of things to see and do there. But of course, that's temporarily suspended right now.
Everything. How is the pandemic there? How has it affected your day-to-day life? Are people using masks? Are people getting vaccinated? What's going on there? Are the numbers high?
They are. Guanajuato is the third in the country after Ciudad de Mexico, and the state of Mexico is Guanajuato. So we're number 3. And vaccines are not being administered as effectively as they could be. They've just gotten to the over 40 age group. And we've been between yellow and orange continuously since it began.
Mexico has a traffic light system, so yellow and orange they're pretty high risk areas. Mm-hmm. Someone told me, I want to say it's Puerto Vallarta. I want to say that's the state of Jalisco, mm-hmm. that they're on red.
They are, yes. Uh-huh. Yeah, they went back to red. I think probably a lot because of tourism recently during the summer brought some variants into the area. So, yeah, it's been difficult. People are not wearing masks. Most people don't believe it to be an actual issue. So
people are still in disbelief up until now.
Yes. So that's where we are.
Goodness gracious. You talk about, the mistakes that you've made just with the property and everything. Can you, I know you're like, I told people on the Bangor Chronicles, her book is like a resource guide. There's so many things in there. It's like chock full of information that you can basically use as a reference, kind of like a consumer's report or an encyclopedia, like Mexico for idiots type thing. What?
Don't do this.
Yeah, don't do this. I've already done it. What are the common mistakes that happen that you've observed, in your time here from immigrants and expats, what do you see as a common folly that a lot of, particularly people from the United States or Canada, north of the border, what are the common mistakes that immigrants or expats make when they move to Mexico, particularly like your audience, the women who are married to Mexican men who weren't in the States legally and had to move here under, I call it under duress, because I know that many people were happy with their lives in the States, and the lack of legal status kind of forced this move. So what are the common mistakes that you see women like that make, or expats and immigrants and expats in general?
I think they make different mistakes. Expats in general and the women married to men that are deported. Women that are married to men that are deported go with them to these rural areas. And for a lot of them, that's a mistake. They won't have the support they need. They won't have an interpreter to help them with the culture. And it's very isolating, basically. Expats, on the other hand, tend to gravitate toward other expats, and they have a better sense of community. They have more connections, and it's a different sort of existence than the woman that lives on the mountaintop. So
I could imagine the isolation, and I wonder why more women don't. And again, I'm an outsider. I'm not in the situation, but my thinking is, okay, well, we're moving back to your country. Why not live in an area where there are more opportunities? But you explained it. You said it's just easier to go back home because you already have that network built in. And nepotism. It's who you know, not necessarily what you know. So that you've explained that. Let's see what else I have to ask you. Why did you feel the need to write these books? What was the catalyst to writing these guides on Mexico? Your blog, Surviving in Mexico. Why did you start writing about this?
Well, basically because I saw so many women struggling with the transition, and it really does take a determined woman to make a success when there are so many obstacles put in your way. Just trying to find basic income in some areas is so difficult, and I see these women floundering, that there are options they can do, but they just are not aware of them. Their idea, their concept of the world is completely different. And that needs to change for them to find a way to make it work, or not, or make the decision that they need to return to the United States for their health or their children's health or whatever reason.
Have you observed a lot of marriages ending or falling apart?
Yes. Yes.
Really?
Yeah. And in part, it's because of the stress of moving to this culture. Women really are expected to act a certain way, behave a certain way, speak a certain way in rural Mexico, that as someone from the United States, that's not how I was raised. And so when the family comes to an area and the husband sees that the women are doing, what he's expecting the women to do, and then his wife isn't, it puts a lot of pressure on her to either adapt or make a stand, one or the other.
Okay, so basically, Mexico literally can, and it's across the board. I've experienced it being in intercultural, relationships, interreligion, intercultural relationships. I've experienced it, and it can either make you or break you. It can either make or break the union, the relationship, the marriage. With your writing and your books, do you find writing to be therapeutic for you? Do you feel as though what you're writing is maybe empowering other women in a similar situation? How do you feel about your books on Mexico and your blog dedicated to surviving in Mexico? How impactful do you think how impactful is it?
I'm not sure everyone knows about me, so I'm not sure how how empowering I am.
They do.
That's my intent in writing these books, is to give women some tools to work with, because you leave everything behind, and yeah, you're basically starting from scratch. So if you have some sort of like a focus, a way to go, or a goal, that really helps. It helps with making things work. And therapeutic, yes, but not necessarily all my books. Like I have some personal books I wrote about our animals. We have animals here, and so I wrote about those. And
Okay.
I have one in the works about the process of building our house. So those are sort of not mainstream books. I don't really expect them to ever sell, but
Don't say
those are
that.
like my books.
Don't say that. So were you a writer in the States? Did you write books in the States?
No, I have always wanted to be a writer, and I have written things. I have written small things, but not as an actual book, because again, the technology has changed so that self-publishing is popular. I'm not the author a traditional publisher wants. Okay, my niche is very small, very specific. And a traditional publisher is going to want something completely different. They want to make money from my books. And I'm not going to make money from my books. So the whole process of self-publishing, since it's become available, has allowed me to make my own books.
Let me ask you about your family. Have they visited you? How do they feel about your life here? Does your child have a relationship with his mother's people back in the States? How is that?
Well, before the pandemic, we were able to, my son and I went to the United States. So we had also gone when he was about 6 for a time, and I worked there. So he does know my family, who hopefully will be watching later. And I don't know. He adjusted well there. I think he enjoyed it. But again, it's a different culture. And I think it helped this time for him to see me in a different context. Like here in Mexico, he sees me as sort of the outsider because he's, fully integrated, fully bilingual and things like that. But when we went to Pennsylvania, he could see me as a part of the community there. And so, a different perspective for him to see me, which was interesting. I hadn't expected that, but
does he see himself back in the United States? Because I'm assuming your son is a dual citizen.
Yes.
Does he see himself creating a life for himself in the United States, or kind of like straddling two countries? So like my daughter is like straddling the United States, Mexico, and then her father's from Ghana, so she also that's a big part of her identity. Where do you think he'll end up? What do you think his future will look like in terms of Mexico or the United States, or a bit of both?
I think he identifies most with Mexico because he's been here the longest. He does have a support system if he were to go back to the United States. My brother is there and his family and things like that. But it really has been hard on him, which I hadn't considered when we moved here, because he has a sort of different perspective from things. So like he struggled in school with, for example, civica ética, which is like Mexican moral values, because he didn't think that way. He had a different perspective that's sort of a mix of my perspective and the Mexican perspective. And so those type of things were a struggle. He doesn't have the same goals maybe as most people in the area, most boys his age. And of course, he's a teenager just finishing prepa, so he's not sure what he's going to do exactly.
Sure. He's still, finding himself. When you're saying the goals are different, obviously his mother's an American woman, so our thinking is different. What goals does he have as opposed to his peer group?
It's sort of like here, if you can find a job, you stay with that because it's very difficult to find a job in the area. Whereas he's kind of looking for something that would give him a little more independence, that maybe he could set his own hours. And he saw both his father and I struggle with the long hours that Mexico makes you work. I worked in a private school for years, and it was just incredibly draining. Not only, you're in charge of everything, you have to attend every event, there are sleepovers, and it's just exhausting to be a teacher here in Mexico. And although he would make a great teacher, he says that's something he would never do because of seeing how much work it is. So I think he has a sort of a more of a perspective, and he sees things like working as something he wants to have a little more control over than what the typical employee in Mexico has.
Now, you touched on so many things, and I wrote about this, about, the scarcity of opportunities, the nepotism, the ageism, and your son saw this with his parents, and he's like, yeah, this is not the program that I'm on. Do you think that there's a change happening? What I'm saying is, like, in terms of the labor law and opportunities for people, you have a job, you have to stay in the job, because a lot of times you age out. Do you see that changing or improving with the labor laws? You don't see it. It looks pretty bleak where you are as well.
Yeah.
And that's central Mexico. So, I mean, I don't know it. I read, and I can't remember the source, but I remember reading that there are two Mexicos. There's the north, which is progressing forward, and the southern part of Mexico, which is really regressing. It's progressing backward. That is what I read in this article, and I can't remember the source. I don't know if the highlands or the central part of Mexico, I don't know what to categorize it, if it's considered north or south, but do you feel as though that it just, to me, there just seems to be such a divide between a Monterrey, a Mexico City, and a Guadalajara, and a Veracruz port, maybe, I don't want to say that San Miguel Allende is not a good example because there's so many expats, but they just seem like those three cities are just so different and progressive and large compared to these other cities in other parts of the country. Do you find that to be true?
It is. And I think that's another thing that people struggle with when they think about Mexico, because those cities are so advanced and they have so many things. Querétaro is another one that is just an industrial city, and it's a beautiful city, really. They have so many things. I don't know what's the word, but those areas are incredible. There are opportunities that you wouldn't find in other areas. And because there's such a disconnect between rural Mexico and these metropolitan areas, people just assume that it's going to be easy, that, yeah, you can have all the things that you had in your previous life, because those specific cities have them. San Miguel de Allende is another one. It's gorgeous there. But it really, I would say, in the last 10 years has changed so much and advanced to such levels that it really is like a community of itself. People outside that area find it difficult to manage San Miguel now because of the prices and the expats and things like that. So
yeah, it's like a city state. From what I hear, I don't. Let me ask you: are there a lot of immigrants or expats from the United States or Canada where you live?
No.
No. Okay, that's like where I am here. And I want us to get to your books. I want to talk about your blog, your books. Tell me about your blog, Surviving Mexico. What do you talk about in your blog? What do you cover?
Everything, really. It's focused on our life here in Mexico. So sometimes there are animal updates, like, what's going on with our animals. We have horses and goats and dogs.
Horses?
Yes.
Do you have horses? How cool is that? Do you ride?
Not well, but
does your husband or your son, do you guys ride?
Yes, my husband is pretty regular. There are these caminatas every week, and he goes, and so he loves having that, and so that's an advantage of living in a rural area that you're not going to have in the city. To have the animals, it's been a nice experience with those. So I talk about those. Sometimes I talk about current events. For example, the area that I live in is sort of in a turf war with different cartel gangs. And so that's like a concern in our area. And sometimes I'll write about that. Not too often, though, because my family reads these things and I don't want them to worry. So, yeah, sometimes I write about people, events, different things that in Mexico. It's mostly related to things in Mexico.
Now, what about your series? Because you've written a lot of books on Mexico. I happen to be in one of them. Can you share with us all your different books and their themes, the ones on Mexico,
All
and then
my
we'll talk
different
about
books.
the other ones.
Okay, all my different books. Let me think.
Yeah,
I have a
your
series.
Mexico books are really great guides.
Yes, I have a series called A Woman's Guide to Making to Living in Rural Mexico, and that has 6 books in it. The latest one is about making a living in Mexico, so it's focused on employment options that. Because it's so different from a metropolitan area. There are fewer options, and you have to overcome quite a few challenges in rural Mexico compared to other parts of Mexico. So that's the latest one. I also have in that series one called Surviving Voluntary Exile. And this one is specifically for women that are finding it difficult to make the transition here to Mexico, because it's not easy. And a lot of it, like I mentioned earlier, has to do with your own expectations. If you expect something and Mexico doesn't provide that, it really does affect you. So that's kind of looking at that. I wrote one about holidays in Mexico because when my son was going through school, I had no background. They told me, oh, today he needs to dress up as Allende. And I'm like, who is Allende? What is he supposed to dress up on? And so that was more as me as a mother trying to navigate the Mexican school system. So there was that.
Yeah, it could be a doozy. It could be a doozy.
There are some things you just never expect you'd have to deal with. And
yes,
there you go.
It was difficult for us as well. It was definitely challenging.
Yes. Then I have one. I have a chronic health condition, and the Mexican healthcare system is interesting to say the least. So that is another challenge that a lot of women don't expect. I knew how to go to the doctor in the United States. I knew how to make an appointment. Okay, the whole process is different here. So I wrote about that. I have one that is kind of like a journal because I think that writing would help a lot of women to get through their frustrations and try to find a different way to look at things. That's very difficult. So journaling for me is therapeutic, and so I made a journal specifically for women.
Writing is very therapeutic.
And the last one in that series is about disasters. It's called A Woman's Survival Guide to Disasters in Rural Mexico, because being a woman in Mexico is very challenging. The culture not only is challenging, there are some real dangers. And a lot of times, I know in the expat groups, it's not permitted or frowned upon to mention these actual problems that a woman might have in Mexico compared to other countries.
Can you mention that here? Because I don't like, there's these false narratives. Mention what you've encountered or what you've learned.
Femicide is the #1 killer of women in Mexico.
I posted something on the Bangor Chronicles yesterday about femicide. I sure did.
Yeah, this is a huge concern. And impunity. People, men who attack women are never held accountable. And so this cultural system perpetuates itself. People are kidnapped all the time. And again, that's something that in expat groups, they don't want to talk about. No, you have to know someone and be in the drug trade. No, they'll stop a busload of people and just take whoever they want off that bus. You know, that's a real concern for women in Mexico or families in Mexico as well. And so with that book, I tried to go through not just natural disasters, like we have earthquakes and volcanoes and hurricanes here, but the living situation in some areas can be you need to take precautions. You need to be aware of your surroundings and things like that. Doesn't mean that you should live your life in a frightened manner, but that
situational awareness. You have to be aware.
exactly.
I got a feed. There was something in the group about kidnapping here in Mexico, and I commented, "Oh, I need to read this article because I wanted to come back to it." And then someone said, "Oh, well, this in the United States, this happens in the United States." And I said, okay, well, yeah, but we're not talking about the United States. This article is talking about Mexico. And then other people really basically attacked me and gave me all these different examples of, oh, well, in the United States. And I said, I'm not negating what's happening in the United States. I'm well aware kidnapping is not unique to Mexico. It's not unique to the United States. What I'm telling you is that I live here and I need to be aware and I need to know. I don't want to operate in ignorance. And I think this is a theme that I find in some of these immigrant expat groups. People want to have this ignorant existence.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know what it is. I deal in reality. I raise my daughter the same way. I let her be very aware of danger. And, I tell you the ugly, the good, and the bad. I tell you all of it. And to prepare her. And I say that to say, there was one woman who agreed with me, and she happens to be an immigrant in Spain. But she spends a lot of time in Mexico. She says, look, why are you saying woulda, coulda, this, that? Why are we comparing Mexico to the United States? We're talking about a situation here in Mexico. And, why are you referencing where you're from? Do you live here or do you live there? Or do you want to know what's going on here? Do you want to be aware? I tell people all the time, if people ask about kidnapping and dangers, I said, I'm cautious because I'm a single woman. I'm a single Black woman here. I'm a mother. So I'm very cautious with who I interact with and what I do in my movement, but I need to be aware of where I am. And I just don't see why there's this pushback in these immigrant groups. Expat immigrant groups. I don't understand it. So I appreciate you writing that. I appreciate you being honest and sharing that, because it's not all like, unicorns and roses here. There's an other side to Mexico, and it's very real. It's very real. Let me ask you, let's talk about your books on writing. Can you share that with us? And then I want to talk about your children's books.
Okay, well, the writing books were a result of my actual self-publishing process. It's not an easy process. So I think that everyone that has a book should be able to publish it. I don't think that it should be just restricted to people who have contacts in the publishing industry, or people who have a topic that is trending, for example. I think that there are a lot of people that can share valuable information, and they should. So
I'm intrigued. What is the self-publishing process? Because I know you're on Amazon. So what is that process?
It is basically you just upload your stuff to their site, and they will publish it. They have a print-on-demand aspect where you can order books. You don't have to have a minimal number of orders. For example, I can order one book and they'll print it, and then I have a copy of it. And then if someone else orders it, then they'll print that book, and then it'll go out. So it really is streamlined the process of publishing. But that means also there's a lot of crap out there that books that are really not quality books, because they don't take the time to refine what they have or to make it clear what they want to say. And that's sort of where my books go. If you have a book, I think that it should be presented in a way that people take you seriously, that your book is professional, that it's formatted correctly, and that you find a way that you edit it correctly, that you take the time to make sure there aren't mistakes. And grammar mistakes are a huge thing. I'll stop reading a book after a certain point if the person has not taken the time to edit it. So that's where my books. I have 3 books in the series right now. One focuses on formatting. One focuses on actually uploading your stuff to Amazon. And the third one is on marketing, because if you want people to know that you have something available, you need to Tell them about
Right.
it.
Yes, 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 yes. Please look her up, survivingmexico.com. Um, and I want you to tell us about your children's books. Is that your
That's my
newest
newest stuff.
variety? And
I'm
what was the
still working on
motivation
the
with that?
formatting there.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Most definitely.
it's difficult because as children's books, these are going to be illustrated books, and my friend Claudia does an amazing job with the illustrations. And but getting them formatted correctly so that they print correctly and so that they are on ebooks correctly, that's been very challenging. I struggled with it this morning. I was trying to get one uploaded and it was a complete failure. I have to start over. But the one children's book that I finally have ready is about the town nearest where we live, and that one's about Morellón, which is closest to where we live. It's a coloring book. It's just sort of the history of the town and things like that. So that one is done. The other ones that I'm working on, I have to see if I could format them correctly.
Okay, okay, okay. Let me ask you, I want to, close with what would you advise your 2007 self? Or what I want to say is, women that are married to men who don't have, legal status in X country, and you find yourself having to move, in this case, Mexico, what would you advise those women how to deal with that, navigate that? And then also, what would you tell them? Hey, you're moving to Mexico. This is what you need to know to be successful with your marriage, to be successful here, to be successful with your political family, your in-laws. What would you advise them?
To be strong. It's a very difficult process. You really have to be okay with yourself, um, who you are as a person, before you even try to tackle anything else. So moving to another culture just really wrecks your self-esteem. It takes you to the barest part of you, and then from there you have to struggle to rebuild. If you don't have a strong sense of self before that process, um, you might never get there. You might be terribly depressed. You might find it so difficult that you just give up. Um, but I think that's what I would tell my 2007 self, that it's going to be way harder than you thought. But hang in there, because you can make a successful life in whatever country you move to, not just Mexico if you move to another culture. But it is way more difficult than you expect it to be. And a lot of people have illusions that it'll be easy, that love will conquer all. No, it won't. Okay.
I'm telling you, is it Michael Bolton? Who sang it? Sometimes love just ain't enough.
Yeah.
There's another song, from the 80s, or just, ain't no romance without finance. And I try to tell people, you have to, I guess you have to really center yourself, like you said, be grounded and be strong. Hello, Mohammed. Hello, Eric. I'm saying hello to people in the chat. And Miss Bradley said, I love this talk, Roxana. Indeed, some people want to portray a Shangri-La once we've left the US. Maybe it has to do with them being invested in making their naysayers wrong. And I want you to, what do you think about that comment? I'll hand it
That's
over to
probably what it is.
you.
People so want their life in Mexico to be the ideal life, that I think that they ignore things, that they don't want to see things, because that would interfere with their perception of reality. And I think that's true in all cultures anyway, that people believe what they want to believe. And that may be okay for some people, but it won't help you in rural Mexico, because things are what they are. And if you are in denial about that, then there's no way you'll be continually struggling with your life there.
I tell you, I'm noticing something, because you're talking to women who whose husbands are from these rural areas. So on the outside, I'm thinking, okay, the assumption is rural areas may not have as much, economic development. And this is what drives the migration north to the States, okay?
Exactly.
Because of the economic situation. And then there's an understanding that those that cross illegally into the States, usually they don't have economic means, so this is the way that they can get to the States. I don't know, because in the groups that you and I are in, the group that we're in, do you find many of the women in that group, are they with men who are from larger cities and more cosmopolitan areas? It seems to not be the case. Are the majority of the women in these situations, because to me, it seems like everything is economics, is the driver here. So obviously, if you don't have means, you have less resources, you have less opportunities. But I'm just wondering, are there women who are vocal, who are married to Mexican men, who are from the larger cities, who are from the areas that have a better economics? Do you find that? I don't know. I just don't.
There are some women, yes, that have, they're living in areas that are better. For example, there's a lot of women that live along the border so that they cross every day into the United States to maintain the economic situation in their family. Their husband stays on one side, they go to the other side. Often their children attend school in the United States. So that's a whole different challenge. The husband.
Women get it done. Women
Yeah.
get it done.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering, because of the machismo culture, because you see, I don't know if the men feel emasculated because of machismo. There's just so many things going on. Again, from the outside, because I'm not married to a national. It's a lot of sacrifice that these women make. Keeping the family together, crossing every day. I mean, that's a lot to cross every day. Or you go spend, like you mentioned, you spend some time in the States working, and this is a lot. And I always wonder, how do men feel emasculated? Do they go through a depression because they're not able to provide? And this is a very strong part of the machismo culture. How do the men deal with basically the women kind of taking on this role of provider? Not that women weren't working in the United States, that's not what I'm saying. But in many instances, when they're in this kind of upside down situation, the women have to take the lead as the provider. It could be because they're from the United States. It could be because they're better educated. How do the men deal with that, and how does the family deal with that dynamic?
Well, we talked about it. Femicide is the #1 killer here in Mexico. I think that the cultural influence has a lot to do with it. And when we have these situations where women need to provide for their families rather than the men, it does enrage the man. And there are situations where this is an issue. So, yeah, I think that's how they deal with it.
The economic driver. Okay. Well, I've enjoyed our chat. And again, her name is Miss Flores. C.E. Flores is what she goes by, and she has several books on life in Mexico: To Be Successful, to Succeed, Surviving in Mexico, or Surviving Mexico is her blog. And please look out for her. She's going to start an Instagram. You can find her on Facebook. She's going to start an Instagram channel, and she was nice enough and kind enough to, now people are coming in, now you're greeting. And anyway, well, let me open it up. Let me see. Eric, I don't know if you're still here. Mohammed, Ms. Bradley, Evan, hello. Do you have any questions for Ms. Flores? Does anyone have any questions? I'm going to open up the chat now. I see three people, but sometimes StreamYard doesn't show you all who's in the live, the beauty of technology. So does anyone have any questions? I'm going to ask them in the comments. Any questions? Because we have a person here that is a wealth of knowledge. I can spell. Okay. I'm going to open it up to see any questions. So I'm asking you before I end the broadcast. C. Flores is an author on books in Mexico, How to Survive. She's particularly, her books are for women, particularly women who find themselves living in rural areas, who are married to Mexican nationals. or women who've had to move here because of economic means. So she's showing you, giving you the tools that you can use to survive and be successful here. And she also has a series of books on writing. She's self-published on Amazon, and now her latest endeavor is children's books. So if you have any questions, I'll give you another minute or two to ask. That's Eric, Miss Bradley, Evan, Mohammed, and they're all quiet now. So we'll give them another minute to see if they have a question for you. If there's anything else you want to share, please, the floor is open to you.
No.
All right, I'm waiting on them. I think, all right, cultural differences we talked about, writing.
I see a question.
Mhm.
No, I was not farming before Mexico. This was a complete change. I didn't expect to have to adapt quite so much. I'm from a small town, but we had all the conveniences. We had electricity, running water, all those things. Yeah. So no, this was new for a new experience.
Okay. So she has horses and land. That's what I want. I'm not a farmer. I don't know what's going to happen because I like to do my nails, but I definitely want land. And it's for my daughter. I mean, I wouldn't know the first thing about farming. I would have to call my mother, call my ancestors to come here and help me because I don't know about farming. Obviously, my grandparents. Anyone else? Let's see, Evan or Muhammad or Eric. If you have any questions for Ms. Flores or for myself, please feel free to put them in the comments. I'll give you another couple of minutes. I'm just looking at the transition adjustment. And you're saying now that, 2007 until now is a long time, like what is that, 14 years.
Mm-hmm.
You say you have a better relationship with your suegros. Yeah, but that's in-laws, that's anywhere in life. That could be anywhere. Obviously the dynamic changes when you're in a different country, you're not in your, where you're from. But problems with the political family is just pretty much it. What I find is I love the connectedness of Mexican families, but sometimes it can be very abusive. It can be very abusive in how close they are, always needing to help and support really without question. And a lot of times it could just be a really abusive situation. But you have to take the good with the bad. Okay, Ms. Bradley says she wants a little farm. Okay, well, where do you want your farm to be? Where? Let me ask her where. No idea where to start. Okay, well,
yeah.
What do you know anything about
difficult.
farmland? Because someone else had asked me this, and I
No.
did research for them.
But I am going to say that finding a place is a whole nother challenge here in Mexico. I actually wrote about our process of buying land in, it's called La Yakata Revolution. It's one of my personal books. Because actually finding land is, again, you have to know people. It's not as easy as going to a realtor in rural areas. You go to somebody and they say, hey, yeah, my cousin has a lot. They're selling such and such a place. And so you go look up the cousin. Nah, I don't think I want to sell it now. Or it's a really frustrating process. So finding land without the infrastructure, without the community that will let you know where is a place for a place that you can buy or things like that. It makes it more difficult. Yes,
that's very true, and I'll add on to that. I look at land from time to time in the Facebook groups. I belong to local Mexican or local groups. I live here, so I belong to local groups, and I'm always on Facebook groups. And there's quite a bit of land that's available not too far from where I live in the outskirts of the city. So that's a good resource where if you find an area that you're interested in, if you just want to buy it and hold on to it to resell it, or buy it to redevelop it, or buy it to develop it to live, the Facebook Marketplace is a resource for you. Obviously, it's important, in these spaces you have to really use your Spanish so you don't get got.
and yeah, you need to find out more. For example, we bought an area where there are no utilities. Although there is the infrastructure, it appears that there are utilities. It has posts and drainage, but it's not a functional thing, which we didn't know until after we bought the lot. There are lots of places like that. They're not set up correctly, and then you get into a situation where you spend 10 years without electricity. So
my goodness, and this is a reality for many places. Oh, I see. Sounds like rural Senegal, because this is my friend. She's in Senegal, which is, my family's from the Gambia, and that was the country I was headed to first. And she's looking, maybe to move around the continent or come here. Yeah, I guess, the places are just not as developed. One of the things that I look at when I'm in these Facebook groups is, if there's water, like you said, sewage, all of that, because I just don't know. And then I'm also kind of maybe shy because I'm a single woman. And I know people have advised me to buy land because it's cheaper to buy land and build as opposed to buy a ready-made house. And I says, oh no, oh no, oh no. I says, I would just rent a husband. I would literally go rent a husband for him to go deal with that.
Yeah, honestly, that's what you need to do.
That's what I'm not doing.
Yeah, because as a woman, to get things done, it's hard. So
yeah, I wouldn't even buy. I know my limitations. I know my patience, and I wouldn't even begin to think about buying property to develop it in my present condition. I would definitely have to hand it over to someone who I trusted. So there's that. I guess that's all the time. Oh, she said, yeah, no utilities. She said it. They bought this property here, and this is one of the advices that she gave. She's asking about the no utilities. Wait a minute. This is a thing, Elle. This is a thing.
It is. Yes. But if you came in late, you missed the part where technology has made it so that we have solar now. And so that has made life way easier than previously. But we had to do it ourselves. The infrastructure is not here. And you're going to find that's true in a lot of rural areas in Mexico.
Yeah, so that's something to contend with. But what I found in the Facebook groups in my area, there's electricity and water, but that's in my area. She lives is Guanajuato considered the highlands?
Some areas of it, yeah.
Okay.
We don't.
So she's north of me, right? Yeah, you're north of me.
Center, yeah.
Center, yeah. So she's in a different area, and the development is different. But I mean, that could be anywhere. I mean, there's, Mexico's so big. Europe can fit inside of Mexico. Mexico's huge, 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 huge country. Like what, 32 states, 31 states, and the Ciudad de Mexico, the capital. So it's a big country. It's a diverse country. And where you are, what is the topography like? What is the climate like there?
Very dry.
No me gusta, es muy seca, No me gusta. I don't like anywhere dry. Is it flat and dry?
No, it is very rocky, which, surprisingly, since there's so much agriculture in the area, it is difficult. And it says, are you on solar and well and septic? We have a septic tank, and we have what's called an ajibe in our area, is like a cistern, and there are the Presidencia will come and fill it up for a nominal fee every couple months, because there's no water here, and so it's like one of the services to the rural areas. And yes, we have solar, which allows me to have internet. So
where do you get, do you have a garden? Where do you get your food from?
We do. We have a garden. It's not big. We also do sharecropping. So that's another source of food. We try to buy things in season. There's a lot of people that go to the bigger areas and buy fruits and vegetables and bring them back to the rural areas. There's even vegetable delivery trucks where you can go out. They will come periodically, and you just flag them down and buy your produce off the back of the truck.
So where's your closest neighbor?
My suegro actually lives not far from, he's up the hill. Yeah, so.
Okay. So you're not in this isolated situation. You have, okay. All right. Well, it sounds beautiful. I would love to see it one day. And I think that's it. She explained to you about the solar, the septic, and you can connect with her at survivingmexico.com. That is her website. she's one of the more well knowledgeable people that I know in this Mexican space. So she's definitely someone who could give you a lot of information on life in Mexico. We've been corresponding for some time now, and I really appreciate you. Thank you for coming on.
Well, thank you for having me.
I learned a lot from you, and her and I are in several groups, and I've learned a lot from our interactions together, and I hope to connect with you one day, this pandemic. But I gotta get out of here. I'm so bored. I gotta get out of here. I wanna out of here as in other cities, it's not Mexico, but other cities from where I live. You know, it's a beautiful country and there's a lot to explore. Any last words?
No, that's pretty much it. It's difficult, but you can create a life that is very fulfilling, very satisfying. But you really have to work at it.
You have to work at it. You have to work at it. Well, muchas gracias for being here on my channel. Muy amable. I appreciate you. And thank you, Elle. Thank you, Evan, Mohammed, and Eric. We are appreciated. And if I didn't call out your name, I just couldn't see your name. I hope you enjoyed this broadcast. And I know I haven't been here in like 6 months. I want to talk to other people. I don't want to just sit up here and talk about myself. I'm boring. So I want to talk to other people and engage with them and have discourse with them. So, and I got to do better at that. But you're welcome to join me on the Bangor Chronicles. I update there regularly, the Bangor Chronicles on Facebook, and my educational initiative where we are raising the profile on linguistic education. It's the Bangor Institute. So I have a linguistic educator debate series where we are doing debates with other institutions of learning, supporting English language teachers here as well as in the United States and their Spanish teaching counterparts. So those are the two things that I'm doing. I hope you're well. I'm still estoy aquí en Mexico. Todo bien. Gracias a Dios. And I'll talk to you soon. Thank you, Miss Flores. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Okay, bye everyone. Bye. And let me see. And